When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. You understand me? I was born black, I live black, and I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions asked. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
Hey, peace to the family. This is Ikemba Ajore, back with another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. And today we're going to be looking at Huey P. Newton's To Die for the People. This is in commemoration to the Black Panther Party, which was founded on October the 15th, 1966. So yesterday was the anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party. And I thought it would only be right that that I show admiration, you know, to this organization that has such a tremendous influence on the Black Power movement, the Black Liberation movement, not just in the 60s, not just in the 70s, but today. Because you can see the spirit of liberation, the spirit of the Black Panther Party in the struggles that's taking place all throughout the United States and the world, in the fight against imperialism, in the fight against colonialism, right? We invoke the spirit of the Black Panther Party in these struggles. So it's only right. But before I get into that reading, I'm actually, just to give you a heads up, I'm actually going to look at a press conference that the Black Panther Party gave, and Huey P. Newton was speaking on the Middle East and Palestine. And I think it's fitting with what's going on in the world today, what's happening in Israel and Palestine right now. So Huey P. Newton in 1970 is speaking on the Black Panther Party's position as it comes to as it pertains to Palestine. So this is going to be a really good read. I'm also going to look at another one of his articles on the common enemy that he wrote. So I'm going to look at those two things, but not going to take up a whole lot of time. But let me share the reading in the chat. Peace, sugar. Welcome. And again, if this is your first time being here, subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications whenever we do this podcast, and make sure that you like and share so other people know that these discussions are being had. We charge colonialism. We charge colonialism media at the time, but we will be struggling to develop a think tank, which is much needed. But We Charge Colonialism is here to countervail the colonial media, right? The narrative that they put out to try to push forth their agenda. We have to countervail that. The oppressed have to build its own institutions to counterbalance these oppressive institutions, and we have to put out our own narrative to counterbalance the narrative of the colonizer. So I'm going to share the link to the reading in the chat. So that's to the reading To Die for the People. And before I get into that, every time I do one of these podcasts, we are getting closer to the Malcolm X Symposium. And so if you haven't registered for the Malcolm X Symposium, I want to encourage you to do that now. It's happening in Boston. The link to the registration is in the chat, so you can click on that link in the chat, and it will take you right here to Malcolm X Symposium happening in Boston, honoring the 60-year anniversary of the Message to the Grassroots speech. Right, and so when we talk about Malcolm X, and when we talk about the Black Panther Party, right, we have to talk about the influence of Malcolm X on the Black Panther Party, right? And the Black Panther Party, which was founded in 1966, this is founded a little over a year after Malcolm X was assassinated, right, in Harlem at the Audubon Ballroom in February of 1965. So when the Black Panther Party and many other organizations were founded too that to carry out the program of Malcolm X, the US organization is an example of an organization who felt that they were carrying out the program of Malcolm X. Hakeem Jamal, who was the relative of Malcolm X, along with Maulana Kareem, who will form the US organization, believe in 1966 as well. And the Black Panther Party and the US organization, there was an antagonistic relationship between the two. And I won't, spend this podcast getting into that history. But there was, the point is that there were different organizations that were popping up at that time. But this was the influence that Malcolm X had on the Black Power, Black Liberation movement. You will see SNCC move more towards the philosophy of Malcolm X as well. So let me stop sharing that. So again, register for that. That's happening in Boston this November the 10th. So now I'm going to get into the reading. Boom, right here. So this is from page 192. And I'm actually I'm skipping ahead, and the reason I'm skipping ahead, so this is a press conference in 1970. The reason I'm skipping ahead because Huey P. Newton, he's kind of in his feelings in this particular writing right here. But this was a press conference that was given. But Huey P. Newton is kind of in his feelings, and he is being very critical of Stokely Carmichael. And I think that there's some things that he says prior to where I'm going to read that I feel like I don't need to, bring that energy here. So there were some accusations, and I know like Huey P. Newton and Stokely Carmichael, they were at odds at one moment. Stokely Carmichael, or Kwame Ture, who was Stokely Carmichael at the time, was a member of the Black Panther Party. I think he served as Minister of Information, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he was supposed to serve as some sort of like Prime Minister as well. But I think definitely like Minister of Information. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but he definitely held a leadership post in the Black Panther Party. And, there was a falling out between Stokely and Huey P. Newton. And basically, Huey P. Newton is making some accusations here, but I don't want to read that because it's going to take away from the powerful message that's given here. But I will read the chief of staff, though. He opens up the press conference. I will read that. Give me a sec. And this press conference, Huey P. Newton is going to be speaking on the Middle East. And of course, y'all had the link. So if y'all want to read what Huey P. Newton had said, y'all can do that on your own time. But David Hillard, who was the chief of staff, He starts off the press conference by saying the press conference was called in response to the allegations that the Black Panther Party had a delegation of Panther members led by Stokely Carmichael in Jordan. The Minister of Defense, Huey P. Newton, is here to repudiate those statements because we do not have any Panthers in Jordan. But we do have an international section in Algeria headed by the Minister of Information, Eldridge Cleaver, and our Field Marshal, Donald Cox. They are representatives of our party who are in daily contact with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and they're the only authorized Panthers outside of the United States of America. Yeah, Eldridge Cleaver was Minister of Information. So Stokely Carmichael, he must have been like prime minister. I can't remember exactly what his post was, but if anybody does have that information, I could have swore it was Minister of Information. But if you can get that information put in the chat, that would be what's up. All right, so let me get into this. So we would like to emphasize that we support the people of Africa in their struggle against imperialism, and that our statements do not affect this comradely love that we have for all people in the world who are struggling against United States imperialism. We know that without the support of United States imperialism, no reactionary government can exist. So we are very careful when we start supporting a government that has relationships in support of the United States. And now there is this very strange incident of Stokely Carmichael's allegedly leading a delegation of Black Panthers. The same, did I, oh, no, see, I didn't want to read that. I want to read apologize. Right here, this is where I was supposed to start at. We believe that while socialism will not wipe out racism completely, a foundation will be laid. When we change the structure of bourgeoisie society, when we transform the structure into a socialist society, then we're one step towards changing attitudes. The people then will have control of the mass media, radio, television, newspapers, and these are part of the mechanisms that shape attitudes. We know that the concept of cultural lag will probably run true to form. While the structure changes, the attitudes will lag behind because values take some time to change. But we say that the only way to start changing the racist nature of the society is to revolutionize or transform the institutions. So we would like to reiterate our support for the Palestinian people. We would like to make it very clear that the Black Panther Party is not anti-Semitic. We've been charged with being anti-Semitic. As a matter of fact, statements could be cited where some member of the party has made some statements in anger to hurt some of our white radical friends because we believe that they did not live up to the friendship agreement. But these were internal fights. They should have been kept internal, but they were exposed and used by the reactionaries. And this was partially our fault because we indulged in that. But as far as our official position, we are not anti-Semitic. As far as the Israeli people are concerned, we are not against the Jewish people. We are against that government that will persecute the Palestinian people. We have to admit that there is something wrong in the Middle East. The Palestinian people are living in hovels. They don't have a land. They've been stripped and murdered, and we cannot support this for any reason. We also realize some of the shortcomings of the United Arab Republic. Our view is that people led by the Palestinian people should be led into a struggle, a revolutionary struggle, in order to transform the Middle East into truly a people's republic. And at the same time, we support a small group of people who are in Israel, who are revolutionary and working to see that the Zionist government of Israel is transformed into a secular people's state instead of a religious state. We say that the way the country is operating at this time is the height of chauvinism and ethnocentrism. I say this because any state that requires its members to adhere to a certain religion is a reactionary state. We must transform the world into a place where people can live. We are chiefly interested in the survival of our people, but not at the expense of other people. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's the African way right there. Again, this is interesting because when you think about what's happening now, this is Huey P. Newton talking in 1970. Oh, yeah, that's what I thought. Honorary Prime Minister. Appreciate that. Yeah, Black Power. I was second guessing it for a minute, but appreciate that. Honorary Prime Minister Stokely Carmichael. But this is 1970. Huey P. Newton is making this statement, so we can see how long this is. What, 53 years, and it started even before that. 1970. This was the culmination of years of decades of oppression that was taking place already in that region. So in 1970, we can see nothing has changed, and so when we see the Palestinians push back against that, against this oppression, everybody's acting like, at least the West, the colonizers are acting like they're surprised that an oppressed people are rising up. They're going to be really surprised when Africans, right, when we begin to rise up against this colonial, against imperialism, like we should. We should be rising up the same way these Palestinians are rising up. So Black people in America have been persecuted. Therefore, it is easy for us to identify with other people who are suffering. We have a long history of being enslaved and murdered. We have wrestled with the question of nationalism, and we have concluded that we have a moral right to embrace nationalism. We have a moral right to choose separatism, to move into a separate state, just as the Jewish people had that moral right. But we realized that the United States imperialism would not allow us to separate and live side by side with United States imperialism. I mean, shit, Israel won't do it. So the United States won't do it. I think that's just a reflection. It represents a microcosm of what would take place if there was some pushback here, and if we attempted to do that. I mean, we have attempted in the past, and look what happened. Political prisoners, assassinations, genocide against African people in this country, the U.S. It's obvious that we could not become self-determined because the United States will not let countries exist 15 million miles away in freedom. They will not let these countries exist in freedom 15 million miles away, so they certainly will not let us exist in a separate state in North America in freedom. So the question can be put into the future. The first task is to transform society so the people can live in freedom. This got me thinking right here, though. This got me thinking about the New African movement. And I wonder what the New Africans' thoughts are on this right here. If any New Africans on, you want to come on and speak to this, let me know if anybody's on live. Because, the idea, the 5-state, plan that the New Africans have in the United States, where the Africans here take control of 5 states within the United States and claim that as, independent territory. Will the United States be okay with that? And it's not, that we care, but just as far as like, what would the reaction be? So I'm going to continue. Our central task is to overthrow the ruling circle. So Huey's talking about overthrowing the ruling circle being the objective, not necessarily, focusing on separating with the existence of the imperialists still in existence. He's talking about destroying imperialism. So if the creation of a Black nation, so the creation of a Black nation can be done in peace, without conflict. So the war or the struggle before the creation of the nation, the struggle is to destroy or dismantle the system of imperialism, destroy the empire. So our central task is to overthrow the ruling circle who will not permit self-determination to exist in the world. After we achieve this goal, the question of nationalism can be handled. Black nationalists could then go to the UN and ask for a plebiscite in order to ask the people which way they want to go. After transformation into a socialist society, there may be no need for separation. This transformation can only take place by wiping out United States imperialism and establishing a new earth, a new society, and a new world. So politically, And strategically, the correct action to take is not separation, but world revolution in order to wipe out imperialism, then people will be free to decide their destiny. Self-determination and national independence cannot really exist while United States imperialism is alive. That's a fact. It's a fact. That is why we don't support nationalism as our goal. I mean, look at how Cuba has to live as a result of the existence of the United States, right? Boy, I'm gonna get in trouble messing with these people. So in some instances, we might support nationalism as a strategy. We call this revolutionary nationalism. The motives are internationalist because the revolutionaries are attempting to secure liberated territory in order to choke imperialism by cutting them off from the countryside. When a motive for national liberation is solely to create a capitalist state so that the ruling circle of that capitalist state can align itself with the United States imperialism, then it is reactionary nationalism, and it cannot be supported by revolutionaries. Right, and the reason I make this statement, as far as like watching out, here on this platform, on YouTube, on Facebook, having these discussions right now, we all know what the risk is, right? There's freedom of speech, there's freedom, of movement, all of that, freedom of religion, all of that can exist as long as the state maintains its control, as long as the colonist maintains its control over the key institutions within the society. So we're talking about military, media, right? The economy, the politics. They control those things. They don't care. They could care less, what you say, as long as it's not having an impact or can undermine or affect their position, of power. But once there's, threat to that position, those institutions, then that freedom of speech, all that's going to go out the window. So just like how they, come down on China and all of it, how, they come at, socialist or so-called socialist or communist states, because some of these states aren't, maybe communist in name. But one of the things they try to use against these socialist states is that they limit freedom of speech, freedom of press and so forth. But the United States, the only reason the colonists doesn't control, and which they do in their own way, but they will come down even more during times of war, right? During times of war and during times of unrest. And so, I just want to make that point. So he's going to talk about Israel. Let's get into this. Israel was created by Western imperialism and maintained by Western firepower. The Jewish people have a right to exist as long as they solely exist to down the reactionary expansionist Israeli government. Right. Our situation is similar in so many ways. We say that morally, perhaps the Jewish people can make a case for separatism and a Zionist state based upon their religion for self-defense. We say morally, perhaps we could accept this, but politically and strategically, we note that it is incorrect. In the first place, it is perpetuating nationalism, perpetuating reaction. If nationalism is reaction, and I think that the United States proves this by using nationalism to rape the world and dominate everyone else. In other words, it went from nationalism to the natural conclusion, which is empire or imperialism. So the Jewish people must be careful not to be an agent of imperialism. We are asking the progressive forces, the revolutionary forces inside of Israel to transform that society so that the people of the Muslim religion, the people of the Jewish religion, the people who live in the Middle East will be able to come together as one man and truly build a new world. As a matter of fact, we are looking forward to this time, and we see that this time will exist. We see the contradiction that's developing between the Palestinian people and the UAR. We also see a growing group inside of Israel that is organizing against the racist tactics of the Israeli government. I say that if we go over the record, we can see where the Jewish students demonstrated against their Minister of Defense, against the war tactics of Israel. And we encourage this activity. We struggle with this group of the Jewish people. So we reject any charges of being anti-Semitic. We realize that some people who happen to be Jewish and who support Israel will use the Black Panther Party's position that is against imperialism and against the agents of the imperialism as an attack of anti-Semitism. Yeah, we got to be careful too, because, you know, we know how they'll flip this struggle against colonialism and imperialism. When we call out apartheid, you know, we're going to be painted as being anti-Semitic, right? And this is a way to control your language and to control you. We think that this is a backbiting, racist, underhanding tactic, and we will treat it as such. We have respect for all people, and we have respect for the right for any people to exist. So we want the Jewish people and the Palestinian people to live in harmony together. We support the Palestinians, just struggle for liberation 100%. We will go on doing this, and we would like for all of the progressive people of the world to join in our ranks in order to make a world in which all people can live. Right. Power to the people, power to the people. So yeah, you know, again, that's Huey P. Newton in 1970. And I think it's fitting for me to read that, of course, in light of with everything that's happening right now. Again, appreciate y'all for tapping in. So I'm gonna go a few more minutes. I'm going to look at another Huey P. Newton. This is an article right here, Uniting Against a Common Enemy, Uniting Against the Common Enemy. And this was published on October 23rd, 1971. I believe this was in the Black Panther newspaper. So I'll go through this and we'll wrap it up. I want to appreciate everybody for tapping in too. I think, you know, it's only fitting that we uplift Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party and Bobby Seale, who was the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, and many others, Fred Hampton, who was the chairman in Chicago, who was gunned down at the age of 21, assassinated by the government, right, the United States government. And this is genocide. You know, when William Patterson and the, I think it was the Congress of Racial, it was the Civil Rights Congress. William Patterson, who was a member of the Civil Rights Congress, him, W.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, and others, right, signed a petition charging the United States with genocide and took that to the UN in 1951, right? And many of them, you know, these people, passports, William Patterson, I think passport was revoked or taken from him. And they kept them from taking that petition to the UN, right? Charging the United States for genocide. And that was in 51. After, you know, this history, and we're not even talking about slavery, at least in that petition, they weren't even talking about slavery. They were talking about everything that took place after slavery, right? The lynchings, the murders, the murder of our leaders. And so even after 51, we can see with the creation of organizations that was resisting this empire, United States empire, how this government took out our leaders. We still have political prisoners locked up to this day. And this is genocide when they prevent your leaders from being able to organize and lead, right, their communities, when they assassinate the leaders or key members of that community, when they prevent them from being able to reproduce, which was done through sterilization acts, right? All of these things. This is a form of genocide that was taking place in the United States, but also takes place around the world because empire is exported. You know, this United States goes around the world, and Huey P. Newton. Actually, I feel like Huey P. Newton going to touch on this, so I'm not even. I'm really getting ahead of myself. I'm evoking the spirit of Huey P. Newton right now. But I'm gonna read this because he talks about this, so there's no need for me to repeat what he's going to say. So in this particular article, he's going to talk about intercommunalism as well, which I think is powerful. Intercommunalism. So He says, what does the Black Panther Party mean when we say that we are revolutionary intercommunalists? In a few words, we believe that the world's people form a collection of communities, all dominated or controlled either directly or indirectly by the United States, by those few who rule the United States. The most common definition for a nation, as opposed to a community, is a group of human beings who have in common their own land or territory, economic system, culture, or way of day-to-day living, language, etc. At one time, men from one nation would go out and through warfare conquer other nations. The conquerors would bring under the control the resources, the people, perhaps everything that was sovereign or sacred to the other nation. A variety of things would result. A government of the conquering nation might be established. A nation might be established on the territory of the conquering nation. The foreign language may be imposed upon the people. The name of the nation might be changed. But most importantly, the economy of the conquered nation will be fully controlled by the conquerors. Right? African people know this all too well. Right? We're walking around speaking English, speaking French. You know, we adopted the economic system of the oppressor, right? The political economic system of the oppressor, right? We have to survive in the system. We adopt it. We legitimize it every day by being a part of it, right? And not having the will to go out there and build, you know, our own political economy. You know, something separate from the imperialists. Sometimes a nation is very small, sometimes very large. But in this way, through these wars, the Earth's peoples have, over a very long period of time, become divided up according to national boundaries in varying ways at different times in history. These wars of conquest have changed world maps, or what one landmass is called. Sometimes one will look at a certain area and it might have a different name or boundary line, depending upon the date of the map and sometimes who printed it. We can remember such terms as the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. We can remember Columbus, quote unquote, discovering America, or as he thought, India. And certainly some changes in national sovereignty have been made since then. Today, things are different. The entire Earth's landmass is known to man. The 20th century's 2 world wars have complicated things even more as to the national question. Technology is so advanced that places about which we had only heard in the past are immediately reachable in person. Today, a person can travel completely around the world in less than a day's time. If we bring all these past and present facts together with other information, the world begins to look a little different. What else do we need to remember? That in the area of technology, the United States is the most highly advanced country, that a territory as large as China, containing within its boundaries 1/4 of the entire Earth's population, cannot either lay claim to its own former province, Taiwan, or participate in an organization supposedly representative of all nations in the world, the United Nations. That most former empires such as France, Germany, Italy, Britain have lost their former holdings. The French have been run out of Vietnam and Algeria, the British out of India, the Germans out of Russia and Poland, the Italians out of Ethiopia, etc. The point is that only one country stands as the sovereign stronghold, dominating and threatening the sovereignty of all other peoples and lands. It is the United States Empire. No people, no land, no culture, no national economy is safe from the long arm of the last remaining empire. And even, you know, going back to Israel, you think about it, you know, even the people, the Palestinians and the people of that region, you know, they can, you know, end apartheid and they want to end it. But what's preventing them from ending it is the outside influence of the imperialists, the United States, Britain, France, these countries from the outside who stand with the settler state. You can go all the way to South Africa, wherever African people are, right? And, most Africans will stand with the Palestinians as far as in support of, they will support the Palestinians. Some people don't care. I will admit there's a lot of people who feel like we don't have a dog in this fight. We shouldn't be concerned about it. We got our own problems, right? And I get why people, would say that. But the point I'm making is like these people in that region, they can't even exercise any power because of the influence of outsiders. So Israel, this small population of people, is able to exercise the most power in that region, exercise power over the majority in that region as a result of the support that's coming from the empires like the United States of America. So the situation is this: a people can look only backwards to history to really speak of its nation. We call these former nation communities. All these territories exist under the threat of being brought into, or in fact, being a part of the United States empire. This is interesting stuff right here. Some of the territories are liberated, such as China, the northern halves of Korea and Vietnam, or Albania, but the weapons of conquest, the war weapons produced by modern technology, are in the hands of the United States. Not even a liberated territory can lay claim to sovereign control of its land, economy, or people with this hanging over its head. Right. And I think like what Huey is saying that, even this idea of being a nation, right, is an illusion under empire, under the United States empire. If you look at this international regime, the Europeans and the Euro-Americans who are living high on the hog, living at the expense of African people around the world. These people are preventing African people to really exercise sovereignty. So in name, there may be independence. The flag is waving, we're independent, but we already know neocolonialism has undermined any semblance, of independence, right? That has been undermined. So I think what Huey is getting at is like, these are really communities. We have a bunch of these different communities that exist under the empire. And so in order, so we have to look at that. We have to, and understand that all of these different communities that are oppressed and exploited now have to begin to work together strategically to overturn this oppressive and exploitative relationship. So let me know that that's making sense. If that's making sense, this is what Huey is getting to, though. We Black people in the United States have always lived under this threat in our communities inside the United States. United States government control of our communities is not difficult to understand. That's why Black people in the United States represent an eternal colony. We're a domestic colony. It's emphasis mine. So finish here. So for most of us, it is difficult to imagine our lives without such domination. We have never controlled a land that was ours. We never controlled the land, talking about here in the United States right now. We have never controlled the land that was ours. We have never controlled our economy. We know of one culture, and that as slaves. We know of one language, that of the slave master. Our sovereignty was not violated, for we United States Blacks were never a sovereign nation. That's something, boy. It is true that we were snatched from African shores. The present fact is that we cannot ask our grandparents to teach us some native tongue or dance or point out our homeland on the map. Certainly, we are not citizens of the United States. That is clear, and I wish that was more clear for a lot more Black people, because if that was clear, I think we would be moving with a sense of urgency, right, to change our status within these United States. Our hopes for freedom then lie in a future which may hold a positive elimination of national boundaries and ties, a future of the world where a human world society may be so structured as to benefit all the Earth's peoples. To achieve this end, we struggle here inside the United States to get rid of our oppression. Others struggle inside their territory boundaries to get rid of oppression. The more territory we liberate in the world, the closer we will come to an end to all oppression. The common factor that binds us all is not only the fact of oppression, but the oppressor, the United States government and its ruling circle. We, the people of the world, have been brought together under strange circumstances. We are united against a common enemy. Today, the philosophy of revolutionary intercommunalism dictates that survival programs implemented by and with the people here in America, and those same basic people survival programs being implemented in Mozambique by the Mozambique Liberation Front are essential to bringing about world unity for Africa, to the Black community inside America, developing and uniting against a common enemy. That enemy has rolled up into one large hand the power of the world. If we get rid of this enemy in a united kind of struggle, it will be easy to transform this unity into a common scheme of things. We are not separate nations of men to continue the pattern of fighting amongst ourselves. Read this again. We are not separate nations of men to continue the pattern of fighting amongst ourselves. We are a large collection of communities who can unite and fight together against our common enemy. The United States domination over all our territories equals a reactionary in opposition to the interests of all set of circumstances among our communities, reactionary intercommunalism. We can transform these circumstances to all our benefit, revolutionary intercommunalism, right? And you know, just to touch on that point right there, because I think it's powerful to think about, you know, what is needed to liberate ourselves. You can't, a struggle in the United States, African struggle in the United States to liberate ourselves, to bring about a revolution, we would still be isolated in a world like, well, first of all, with that, is that revolution, does that mean the complete destruction of America? So we're talking about a change of guard in the United States. And what's the possibility of that, at least in the short run, right? You know, places like Haiti, Jamaica, wherever African people are, without a connection to other communities around the world and developing some sort of international community, it's going to be very difficult to undermine the system of the international political economy, because who are you going to be doing trade with? Who are you going to be doing import-export with? Because at the end of the day, economics is the foundation, right? In order for us to survive, there has to be some sort of economy that exists. And so, you know, will you live in isolation? And that's no way to live, man, to be isolated from the rest of the world, you know, with because all the colonists is going to do as a result of your policies is put some sort of sanctions on you, right? Embargo, prevent you from living. And then they will attempt to, we see the history, they will attempt to undermine your government, your community, right? The way that your community is structured. You know, so, you know, with that being said, there has to be some sort of international network that's going to undermine colonialism. And this is a people who is pushing forth this international system that only represent a small geography of the world. They only represent a small geography of the world, and they're a minority of the world, right? So they can easily be isolated. So you know, we have to like really give it to them, because, man, you know, for them to be able to maintain this, you know, sustain this type of control over the whole world, you know, there has to be some serious indoctrination going on. You know, of course, there was the force. You know, they came through with the force, but to maintain it at this day and age, you know, that comes from centuries of miseducation and indoctrination. So Rooney B, peace, there's a circular world. Let me see what you got here. There's a circular world-based order where everything starts in the West and can be disrupted if the West wants it to. Independence nations is really a nominal notion in current day. Independent nations is really a nominal notion in current days. Yeah. Is there independent nations? And I think that, again, that's going back to what Huey P. Newton is talking about. If I understand what you're saying, but you know, when we talk about the only nations, well, first of all, there's this interdependence. Like, there's no, you know, nation that's strictly independent, but there's nations that can probably, like the United States, right? For instance, as an empire, can stand on its own. But most states, and even how long would that last? But most states have to are dependent on other countries. Former colonies, or quote unquote former colonies, are dependent on the quote unquote North or industrialized states. And the only reason they're dependent on it is because they've been locked into this international economy. So they have been, whatever economy existed, whether it was, people were herders, you had herders or farmers, it was based on agriculture, whatever type of economy existed prior to the coming of the colonizer, they had to change, the whole economy had to be transformed in order for those people to survive in the international economy that they was forced into, right? So and it's the same thing that happened internally within Europe. This is why Europe had to go out into the rest of the world and colonize non-European people, is because of the oppression and exploitation that existed within their own lands. The closing off of the commons, when people were pushed off of lands and they began to privatize lands, and people, the masses of Europeans began to flood into the cities and because there was no viable economy, there was no stable economy, poverty was widespread, criminality was widespread. That's why, that's not a myth when they talk about Europeans sort of like dumping their criminals on the rest of the world, the impoverished, and that's a whole nother story as far as because criminals, the social system creates criminals at the end of the day. And this is why, but I don't want to, let me not digress, but these people who were considered like the worst element of Europe, was given opportunities to colonize the rest of the world and create wealth in these colonies and send it back to the mother country, right? So they served the purpose. They gave, the lower class an opportunity to climb up the social ladder, but it was at the expense of African people and other indigenous people. And so this goes back to when we talk about the creation of this global system and how it's interconnected. And I think Huey P. Newton, he came to this realization when he developed this philosophy of intercommunalism, where he's seen that, hold on, it's so interwoven, the oppression and exploitation, the way to undermine it is to begin to connect with those other communities where you have millions. You think there's not there's millions of people, billions of people who are suffering as a result of this international system. Millions of people die every year from starvation. People, living off of less than $2 a day, right? So how do we get to, how do we strategize and get all of these people to see that we have a common enemy, as Huey P. Newton is talking about in this particular, article. So with that being said, hey, I got a trip. I'm in New York. I got a trip back to Philadelphia that I got to make. But, I want to appreciate everybody for tapping in. Again, this was to uplift the Black Panther Party. Huey P. Newton, who is considered the theoretician of the Black Panther Party, the man who penned the 10-point program, no matter how, we got some revisionists out there. But, Huey P. Newton, who penned the 10-point program, who was considered the theoretician, I wanted to definitely highlight him today. But there's definitely were so many other key people in the organizing of the Black Panther Party. We have to uplift all of the sisters. More than 50% of the Black Panther Party were African women, Black women. We have to uplift the youth. The average age of the Black Panther Party was 19. I've heard 17 before, but I've heard 19 more than 17. We uplift the youth, we uplift, the sisters, and definitely the men, you know what I'm saying? We have to appreciate the Black men, especially those who, like Huey P. Newton and others who recognize patriarchy and sexism. And even though there was that element that still exists, the Black Panther Party was like really before its time, and combating that eternally wherever it existed, and really opening the door for other organizations to follow suit. And the last thing too is something I don't think that I said anything yesterday. Yesterday I was talking about Darfur, and I think I neglected to mention that it was also the anniversary of the assassination of Thomas Sankara. And I would be remiss also to not uplift Thomas Sankara, who was a Pan-African revolutionary from Burkina Faso. He was the one who renamed was it the Upper Volta? I think it was Upper Volta, to Burkina Faso. And he was definitely ahead of his time. And I think, this is, one of our African leaders that we should be learning from and attempting to emulate as we struggle to end, colonialism. So Thomas Sankara, uplift him, peace to that brother, long live Thomas Sankara, and, peace to the chat, everybody that tuned in, tapped in. And, until next time, just to let you know what we got going on. Thursday, 1 p.m., I'm going to be covering Dr. Amerson Wilson's Black on Black violence. I'll be diving into chapter 2. I already covered chapter 1. So if you missed that, you can definitely go back and check out our videos. And, hopefully I'll see you on Thursday. And we have a political prisoner episode tomorrow. So, just check, tap in, because we got a lot going on. So there's a lot going on this week, and I don't want you guys to miss it. Always appreciate y'all for being here. And so next time, peace and power, y'all. Power to the people.